What's up, everybody? Welcome to this special edition of the Stephen A. Smith Show over the digital airwaves of YouTube. Usually I'm coming at you every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, the 3 times a week, I promise. But every now and then I'll add an additional show because it's special, because special people end up showing up on the show. And today is one of those days. You know, when we talk about a lot of things in the world today, we talk about sports, we talk about pop culture and entertainment, we talk about politics, we talk about a lot of things. One of the things we don't talk about directly, but inevitably we're always talking about, is money. The money you put in your pocket, the money you keep in your pocket, the money you end up losing out of your pocket because you don't know how to handle the money that was in your pocket. That kind of stuff that we don't get into enough. How do you make money? How do you keep the money you earn? How do you elevate your profile financially, I'm talking about, and make sure you prosper to a degree that you never fantasized or never even thought about because you didn't imagine that you'd ever be able to make the kind of money you might have the earning potential to make? These are some of the questions that have been asked ad nauseum by an inordinate amount of people throughout history. It's still being asked today. And that's why I'm very, very fortunate, and I think you will be too, to have the guests that I'm going to have in studio in just a couple of minutes. They've got their own podcast, they've got their own platform, and their objective is about elevating financial literacy in this nation, not just in the Black community, but in the American community as a whole. And they're not limiting it to that either, because they've got global connections. They definitely talk about finances the world over, and they're gonna do that here today. The importance of financing, what's been going on, what's coming down the pike, how to best prepare ourselves for the challenges that lie in wait as citizens throughout this nation and throughout this world have to find a way to adjust to the trying times that are inevitably forthcoming. These are the kind of things that we're going to talk about today because they are that important. And I can't think of anybody better to talk to than Rashad, Bilal, and Troy Millings. They are the partners hosting the popular podcast, Earn Your Leisure. And they are coming up next, right here on the Stephen A. Smith Show, over the digital airwaves of YouTube, over the audio airwaves of iHeart. You don't want to miss it. I know I've been looking forward to this. Be right back with the Earn Your Leisure crew in a minute. It's that time of the year again, y'all. The NBA playoffs have finally arrived, and that means every basket, every rebound, every assist is important. And I don't know about y'all, but I need to be part of that action. So how do I do that exactly? I use Prize Picks, of course. You see, Prize Picks is the largest fantasy sports platform with more than 3 million members. Prize Picks is not only super exciting, but incredibly easy to play and takes only 60 seconds to make your picks. All you do is select 2 or more players from the sport you watch, whether it's the NBA, MLB, or even the PGA, and then choose more or less of their in-game stats. So if I know that Steph is dropping 30, LeBron is dishing out 10, and Jokic is pulling down 15 boards, I need to pick that and play to be rolling in the big time money. So go to prizepicks.com and use promo code SAS for a 100% deposit bonus up to $100. That's right, go to prizepicks.com. Type in my initials SAS for a first time deposit match up to $100. That's code SAS when you go to prizepicks.com. Pick more, pick less. It's really, really that easy. Trust me. My guests are financial influencers on a mission to help all of us be smarter about money. They host the popular show Earn Your Leisure, which is ranked in the top 20 business podcasts in the United States, peaking at #1 on the Apple Podcast charts. Please welcome to the show the one and only Rashad, Bilal, and Troy Millings. What's up, man? Earn Your Leisure. That's the podcast. The fellas are here. I've been waiting to have y'all here. How you doing? How's everything going? How's everything, fellas?
Everything's great, how you doing?
First of all, thank you for being here. Really, really appreciate what y'all doing. Talk to us about what inspired Earn Your Leisure podcast. Let's start with you, Rashad.
So I was a financial advisor. Troy was a teacher, and we best friends. We grew up together. So we started teaching financial literacy in the classroom for a summer program, and at the same time, I was trying to work with athletes as a financial advisor, and I thought that building a social media following and getting famous on Instagram would help me work with like celebrities and athletes. So I was building my social media campaign while we were actually teaching in the classroom as well. And the social media got a lot of traction. We started to put some of the clips from the classroom on social media. A lot of the clips started to go viral. So it was a pent up demand. People had started asking like, when are you going to start a show? Can I see more extended content? You know, I got questions. So it was about 5 years ago, and I asked Troy if he wanted to be my co-host in the show. He said yes, and then the rest is history. So that was 5 years ago.
Where were you teaching?
I started in the Bronx, man. So started teaching in the Bronx for 9 years, did that, and then ended up in Westchester and New Rochelle. So I went from a middle school phys ed and health teacher to an elementary phys ed teacher. Yeah.
And what made you decide that you wanted to be a podcaster, do this podcast with him?
Yeah, I kind of was like bestowed upon me. We had a natural chemistry, obviously being best friends, but the education part was where we kind of found a new synergy. So inside the classroom, it was like, all right, we got something here that nobody's doing, right? Being inside the school district, you realize what's not being taught, and it leaves you a lane to say, all right, well, we can add this. And so when he came with the proposition, it was like, all right, well, I've supported him in things before. Let's support him in one other thing. And so when he came with the idea, I'm like, all right, well, let's go for it. We got nothing to lose.
Did y'all find it to be, in terms of being mission-minded, was the priority to teach people how to make money or how to keep money? I know both ultimately come together, but one oftentimes is more of a priority than others to some people that are trying to disseminate a message. What was the primary objective of the message you were trying to send?
Well, the first pillar is how to make money. Because a lot of times you can't save or you can't invest money if you don't have money, right? So I think the first thing is to actually educate people how to make money over and above what they've traditionally been taught as far as to go to school and get a job, right? So we interviewed other entrepreneurs and highlighted other areas of entrepreneurship that actually gave people an opportunity to go and start businesses. And then we also started telling people about real estate investing, telling them about stock investing. So giving them avenues to actually make money. And then from there, it's the psychology of doing the right thing with the money, right? They could kind of go either way. Like you probably have to teach people what to do with money before they even get money, but especially our people, they need to be encouraged, right? So they actually have to see working results happen first.
Because we're suspicious of everything.
Exactly.
No question, no question. We don't trust ourselves, let alone somebody we don't know.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
So what, Troy, what do you find is the number one mistake that people have made or do make with their money?
The number one mistake, over and over, it seems to be the fear, right? People won't get involved in investing because they're not educated, and so there's a hesitancy to be involved at all. And so most times when we don't know what to do with money, right, we do what we know, and that's spend it. Until you start seeing people from other walks of life, and it becomes inspiring to you. So that was one of the goals. It was like, we know athletes and entertainers, that's wealth in our neighborhood, right? In our community. But what happens when you see somebody in the world of real estate? What happens when you see somebody in the world of logistics and investing as that person that you can look to and say, this is something I can actually obtain, and these are the steps. And so the goal was, all right, let's do that, all right? But after, let's actually get people that look like us that are common folk, right? It's not a celebrity, it's your neighborhood person, and so it becomes more of an aspirational thing. So the fear was the first thing that people have to get over. Once they had that, then the trust came, and then people started executing on the information they were hearing.
Rashad, has the trust really come? I mean, because I see black people suspicious every day. Damn it, I'm one of them. Yeah, not about y'all, but I'm suspicious every day. I got financial advisors that work with me that I've known for a quarter century. I'm like, why am I doing that? Why? For what? What's going on with that? That's how I am. What about y'all?
Well, I always say you should always question everything, right? And never have total trust in anything. That's how you make mistakes. So, but I think that we have risen to the level that we are at now because of trust. And we are well aware of that. So the trust has come, but there's always gonna be people that are suspicious. And that's not necessarily a bad thing either. Because like I said, I mean, even we interviewed Al Harrington one time.
Okay.
And he said something that was extremely insightful. He had a financial advisor for his first 3 years in the league. He came out straight out of high school, as you know.
Yep.
So after his rookie contract, he had like $50,000 left to his name, right? And he was saying that the reason why is because all he did was trust his financial advisor. He never asked any questions. And obviously, he wasn't educated. He never knew what was going on with his money. He never knew about taxes. And it led to a variety of different mistakes. So when he hired his second financial advisor, he said the main thing that he wanted to know was educate me. Like, I'll do what you tell me, but I need you to educate me on everything, because if you're not here anymore, I gotta actually be able to do this for myself as well.
How do you trust somebody to educate you if you're lacking trust?
Yeah.
Like the stuff that they're teaching you, Like, wait, are they really teaching me something? I mean, am I really learning what I need to learn? It could be along those lines. How difficult, Troy, is that challenge?
Yeah, well, that goes back to the part of dealing with the education process. And so in order to get trust, you have to go back to the trauma, right? You can't go ahead without understanding that. And so when we talk about our communities, we got to go through the history of why we don't have a successful relationship with money, right? Because it is relationship. And so once you go through that process, now it's like, okay, we've unpacked that. How do we move forward? Well, now here comes the education piece. We're not telling you exactly what to do. We're actually going to show you. I think it's so unique, especially in this day and age where you can watch somebody from the beginning with us, specifically starting with iPhones, creating a business, creating multiple companies, creating multi-million-dollar companies, and they're actually watching the footprints being built. Whereas before we had to guess, how did they get to that level of success, right? We could just aspire to, but we never know. And so when people are actually watching the blueprint happen in real time, it changes the dynamic.
Does how one view their parents and witness their parents handling money, how much of a significant role does that play in how they choose to handle money?
It's very important, and a lot of us come from dysfunctional households when it comes to dealing with finances. You know, a lot of parents always told their children, don't ask an adult how much money he makes. This is grown folks' business. Well, how are you going to ever educate a child if you're keeping them uneducated, right? And then a lot of our parents were uneducated, right? A lot of our parents might have been immigrants. A lot of our parents might have been, you know, first generation starting to actually know about finances themselves. So they weren't in a position to actually teach somebody. A lot of us come from generational renters, right? So when it's time to buy a home, we don't have any reference to actually know if we're getting swindled or not. And we can't actually go to our parents to ask them because they have never owned a home before. So that's another thing that we try to do is teach kids early, right? Because it's a lot easier to teach a kid as opposed to reprogramming an adult. Because somebody's 40 years old, 50 years old, even 30 years old, they've already had their whole life of bad habits. They've already had their whole life. It's not that there's no hope for them, but it's just difficult. So if we can start early, and then when those kids become adults, it's going to take a generation. So now when those kids become adults and they have their families, now we'll have a whole new group of adults that'll be properly educated as opposed to the current group and the past groups in our past.
Is buying a home overrated? And listen to where I'm coming from with this. So you buy a home, right? And okay, it costs a few $100,000, whatever the case may be, right? Okay, get a 30-year fixed rate. You can deduce what that's going to cost you monthly. But what's not taken into account sometimes by some people is the property taxes. What's not taken into account is the upkeep of the house. What's not taken into account are all of those ancillary or additional expenses that come with being a homeowner, whereas when you rent, you don't necessarily have to worry about those things, but you're not accruing value from something you're renting, whereas with a home, you are. Where do you guys stand on home ownership in the year 2024?
Yeah, I think we should both have you go and I'll go.
say this, because that's a good question. And I think that buying a home is a smart decision, but I think most people go about it the wrong way.
All right.
Whereas, okay, you go and they qualify you for a mortgage, right? And you maximize the amount that you qualify for. That's not really the best way to go about it, because 9 times out of 10, you're going to be buying a home that you can't afford. Right? So I'll use like an entertainer, for example. A lot of times people don't understand how entertainers or athletes go broke. So let's say an entertainer has $10 million, right? Now, most of the time, what they would do is they have $10 million, instead of buying $1 million home in cash, and they still have $9 million left that they can invest and do other things with, right? They'll buy a $5 million home and put $1 million down. Now they have a $4 million mortgage, right? So now you're paying $100,000 a month. Like you said, the property taxes, if you live in New York or LA, can be $100,000 a year, right? So now you're paying $100,000 a year in property tax. Now you got to upkeep the property, right? You got acres of land, so now you got to pay for shrubbery. You got to pay to cut the grass. That could be another $20,000, $30,000 a month. Then you have to actually decorate the house. Right. That could cost $1 million right there, right? Then you got to have constant upkeep. Now you got to have security. Now you got to have a variety of different things that come into play that you didn't fully consider when you were buying a home, because like I said, a lot of times you might not have ever owned a home. Okay. So what it ends up happening is that, yeah, it appreciates over the course of time, but you're not actually participating in that appreciation until you sell it, or if you have a HELOC or you're taking money out of your home, but most of the time people won't do that, right? So now you're getting into a situation where you bit off more than you can chew, and you've overextended yourself, and that is a recipe to go broke. So a lot of times people think that they're doing something intelligent by buying a home, but most Americans are buying homes that they can't afford. They're
So you got to
overextending
take
themselves.
into consideration what your daily check is like, what your weekly, monthly check is like, and what the bills are going to cost you, and because you could be house rich, but poor.
Cash poor.
But cash poor.
That's the thing. It's the non-mortgage cost, right? So what you talked about, homeowners insurance, right? That's something that fluctuates. The more that we see the weather conditions changing, right? We see hurricanes, we see all these natural disasters, that goes into an insurance company. They're not looking at it like, hey, that doesn't happen in New York. They're looking at it as a totality, right? If we have to keep writing out claims, then we're gonna have to raise rates. So homeowners insurance is tough to get fixed. You talked about property tax. These things can't be fixed. So if somebody has a fixed income, right, and property tax gets raised every year, it's tough to equate for that. And so people have to take into account the non-mortgage costs, but also the education. Like you just casually said fixed rate. My family is a victim of adjustable rate mortgage, right? They had a mortgage that was 5%.
Yeah, you got to get out of that.
Right, well, in 3 years, that went to 11%. After another 3 years, it was at 16%. We couldn't afford it, we lost a home. But they didn't have my parents didn't have the proper education to understand what a fixed rate is or a 30-year mortgage because they hadn't been around homeowners, right? They're immigrants. And so that process cost us years. It sets a generation to now even get back to the starting point. But in terms of real estate, if you look at the wealthiest people in the world, right? They always had ownership in land, right? They either created their own company, had stock inside of it, or they own real estate. And so in terms of ownership, as far as real estate, I'm always gonna say yes. You should have real estate.
That's right, and even if you're paying a mortgage on it, it's still yours because you have the ability to sell it, and ultimately you can accrue a profit from it to some degree. Maybe not as much as you would like it if you owned it outright, but at least you're getting something as opposed to giving your money away via rent.
And there's plenty of programs as well, right? So we're talking about fixed rate mortgages, but there's FHA loans, there's 203K loans where you can rehab a property. And so the more information we have, the better. That can put us in a place where we're not putting this tremendous debt on our portfolios.
You know, as we sit here talking about this, y'all brought up athletes. You can bring up the common man or woman with some of the issues that are having, and you talking about your parents right now. I remember a time, man. I'm not a violent person, but I wanted to slap the living hell out of this one man. I come home, my mother's alive. She's passed away in 2017. God rest her soul. She's alive, and this is like in the year like 2013, 2014. And I go home to see my mother in Hollis. And there's some dude in my mother's dining room. And I'm like, who are you? What you doing here? And it was some dude trying to get my mother to refinance and to get another mortgage loan out of the house. Now, 2014 or so, I think interest rates was at about 6.5%, 7%. This man was trying to charge my mother 11%. I said, if you don't get the hell out of my mother's house right now. I mean, because you see these swindlers. And to me, what y'all are doing is great, but in the same breath, I'm marveling at the fact that trust has been built, that y'all have been able to do that, because even when you do know, you're gonna check, you're gonna verify, and the people that you choose to talk to, you still might not have supreme confidence that they're giving you the goods to alleviate your concerns when it comes to dealing people like the person that my mother had to deal with. How do you offset that? How do you combat that? I know knowledge is the obvious answer, but how do you go about really fending stuff off from swindlers out there?
Well, I think it's one of these things that if it sounds good to be true, it usually is, right? Let's just start there. So I think a lot of people, especially on the internet, they'll see how to make $10,000 a month from just sitting at your couch eating popcorn. Like, that's probably not like effective way to go about it, right? But then also doing research and having enough information on your own. Like, you have to be educated enough to even ask a question, right? So you should take information, but that shouldn't be where you stop. Go down a rabbit hole, actually study, so now you're actually better prepared to know if something sounds fishy or if it doesn't sound fishy. Another thing is, any professional person that actually comes to work with you, whether it's a mortgage broker, whether it's a financial advisor, CPA, I'm always big on make sure that they're educating you, not just trying to sell you a product. I used to be a financial advisor, so that was my process. I always educated first and took information and listened first before I tried to sell any product.
What would you do? You had a hard-headed client. Well, you had a hard-headed client, like let's say for example, a client that's making some money, got a few $1 million in the bank, but want to spend a lot of it. on a home or something else. You might give them advice, but they're determined this is what they want. And one of the classic lines they'll use is, you can't take it to the grave with you. All right? I gotta live well in some degree. What do you say to a client that acts like that?
I had a lot of clients like that, and that's why most of my clients were women, because they didn't act like that. The men always gave me a hard time sometimes. All you can do is educate people, right? It's like a parent. All you can do is properly prepare your child for the world. If they go out and they want to be an idiot, then hey, God bless them. So that was always my approach, and to this day, that's still our approach, right? Like we try to properly equip people with information, give them a blueprint, but ultimately, if they want to make unproductive decisions with their life, that's their decision, but at least they can say that they wasn't fully informed.
Yeah, so you give them the education, but also teach them how to decipher their own, right? Figure out how to do their research. But I think one of the unique things that we have with our network is that we can have people talking to them who are doing it at the highest level.
Right.
So if we're talking about real estate, we could bring on a Donahue Peoples to tell them exactly what's happening from a commercial standpoint and from a residential standpoint. We can talk to a Cheryl McKissick about development. And so they're hearing people who have generations of knowledge, giving it to them directly. And so we're able to bridge the gap, right? Whereas before, how would you get a chance to talk to a Donahue Peoples? Well, now we've become the ladder for the people that are here at the surface and the people who are doing it at the highest level.
Speak to how advent of social media has helped y'all podcast. Talk about that for a second, Troy. When we're looking at the world that we're living in today, how everybody, it's one thing to say they have a voice, but they have a voice to ask questions. They have a voice to be educated. They have a voice for outreach purposes. How much has that facilitated the success of your podcast?
I mean, it probably can be attributed to all of our success, really. It's been the great equalizer, whereas in the past, how could two guys who come from backgrounds like we do create a network that can reach millions of people? I mean, on a personal level, I remember being in a classroom and trying to figure out how could I impact, have the greatest impact. And I'm inside my school, I'm like, yeah, this is great. Maybe I can impact this school district, but I can't impact schools in California. But social media was that great equalizer where it's like I could put information here and it can impact the world. In fact, as I'm teaching and as we're doing episodes, I'm saying, wait, people are hearing this in Tokyo, they're hearing it in Saudi Arabia, they're hearing it in South Africa. And so it was like, all right, this is where we have to go. We have to find where we can have the greatest impact and lean into that more. And so that became the equalizer. It became the message board, right? So like people use it to their advantage, and some people are on there just, throwing their lives away, not getting anything. But again, it's been everything for us.
I don't know if y'all ever been asked this, because I'm looking at the 1.4 million followers on Instagram. Has that been the most effective social media outlet for you? There's TikTok. You look at the digital stratosphere of YouTube, that's obviously beneficial to all of us in some capacity. Has there been one that has been more outstanding and beneficial to y'all than others?
Instagram has been the lifeline of the situation for us, and we have 1.5 now. I think we have 1.5 on YouTube, so those are our two biggest. But Instagram was the one that actually got us up and running. The virality of it, as far as people just sharing the clips, and everything just started, going organically. We've never spent any money on marketing. So we utilize all social media platforms, but definitely Instagram has always been our number one.
What's your biggest fear right now, Troy, as you consider y'all growth? How much influence that y'all are really carrying, the folks that are paying attention to you, listening to what you're saying, but recognizing the world that we live in right now. You got people on YouTube just on there to make money so they don't have to go out there. I mean, I got a real job. Y'all got real jobs, you understand? And we do this too, but you got people that their lifeblood is being on social media because somehow, some way, come hell or high water, they're trying to monetize their quote unquote brand. How big of a challenge does that pose y'all, as serious as y'all brothers are about educating and uplifting? Things like that can get in the way if the wrong person tries to roadblock and preoccupy folks like y'all with their nonsense.
Yeah, I mean, you got to kind of decipher through that. I think my biggest fear when I think about it is not taking advantage of this moment in time, when there is readily information, where you can go to YouTube as a source, whereas before we had to go through traditional routes, or there was a gatekeeper that could say, hey, you can come in. Right now, we call this the financial revolution, because there's never been a time where we had access to so much, and we can make things so readily available. And so my biggest fear is that we don't really optimize this, because in 5 to 10 years, I feel like we're just going to be so far behind with technology advancing, with more people, more jobs being automated. if we don't really maximize this moment and really get a firm grip of where we want to go as a community, as a people, I fear where we're going to be.
A lot of times we've had that fear for ages. We've had that fear for decades. Is the fear any different now than it's been? I'm not talking about in a literal sense because I understand artificial intelligence, AI, is a different beast than challenges that our community have been faced with in the past. But nevertheless, it's a new challenge, and we've always encountered new challenges. Some of us have evolved and adapted and did what we needed to do. Some of us have fallen victim to it. You find yourself more concerned now than ever before? Is it the same kind of concerns that our ancestors and everybody else had to be concerned
I feel like the next 10 years is probably going to be the most important years in human history. I don't want to sound dramatic when I say that, but when you look at information and they're saying 200 million jobs will be taken out by AI globally over the course of the next 5 to 10 years, right? When you see everything completely changing right in front of us, and a lot of people, the vast majority of the people, are still wasting their time on things that in the grand scheme of things do not matter. It's concerning, right? Because it's like this is a real life shift that's actually happening, right? When we see machines, we see space exploration, we see artificial intelligence, this is happening right in front of us. And it's not like it's happening, where we're not actually privy to the information, but a lot of us are just choosing to turn a blind eye to it and ignore it. And I fear that, if we don't fully prepare ourselves for it, we'll be so far behind that there will never be an opportunity to catch up. But the good thing about it is that this also has provided a unique time in history where you can move up the ladder at a very rapid pace, unlike any other time. So like for us, for instance, we started a network and now we have events, 20,000 people and different things of that nature. We would never be able to do this 10, 15 years ago. We would have to go through CNBC. We would have to change the way that we dress, change the way that we talk, and we would try to have to work our way up the corporate ladder to hopefully one day have an opportunity to start a network. Or we would have to have millions of dollars in investable capital to start a brand. We started with no money. We started with an iPhone and an idea. So that's on the flip side, that this technology has empowered everybody. And if you utilize it correctly, you can actually scale globally for free. And that's the beautiful thing about social media. You don't have to pay on social media. We've never paid to boost anything on social media, right? We literally have grown multi-million-dollar companies off of a free app. And only thing that we had was a laptop, an iPhone, and some microphones, right? And relationships. So if you look at it from that standpoint, it's a very encouraging time. So it just depends on how you look at it, but it's very, very vitally important time in history that we're living in right now.
It's hard for me to use the word encouraging when we're talking about the possibility of 200 million jobs being lost over the next decade. And I'll come to you, Troy, with this question because what I have a hard time comprehending these innovators. Innovation is the way of the world, and I get that. I totally understand that. We evolve as a society. You get that. But the flip side to it is that the more you depend on the machines, the less human beings are employed. Therefore, basically patronizing your products, your brands, et cetera, going out there shopping, stimulating and fueling the economy because they're spending money. If you don't have human beings that are doing that for you, you're sort of sinking the human ship per se, for lack of a better phrase. I don't understand how folks can't see that. Any human being, as creative as you may be, cannot understand that, cannot see that, and make sure that whatever you're creating isn't to the detriment of our society. What are we to make of that?
I mean, Robert Smith told us this. He said there's been...
Robert Smith, the billionaire himself.
The wealthiest black man in American history said there's been 3 revolutions that we have witnessed. The Industrial Revolution, and that created jobs for the country. The Technological Revolution, where we saw the advancement of the internet and computers. And what now we're looking at is the AI revolution. And it can be daunting, right? Hearing that amount of jobs being lost could be discouraging. But you also have to look from an optimistic standpoint where jobs are going to be created. And if you look at it throughout history, right, when people created typewriters, they said, well, that's great until a computer came along. And right, people had mail offices. And how are we going to operate when emails come? But that hasn't stopped any mail offices from shutting down. More people are creating emails. And so when you look inside of it, we have to figure out what are the careers that we can have advanced.
That was exactly where I was going. For the audience out there, what career could potentially exist out there over the course of the next decade where you can be safe from the evolution of AI?
Well, we have to participate in it, right? And so we have to participate in prompt engineering. We have to participate in computer engineering, coding, software, data center study, and cybersecurity, analytics. All these careers are going to be advanced because there's going to be more AI innovation. And so we have to not say, all right, those jobs are being replaced, because it is daunting. When we look at the jobs, they're talking about things that people that look like us usually occupy, right? Exactly. Whether it's the cashier or it's the toll service industries, right? We occupy a large percent of those jobs, which is true. But we have to figure out how we get into the education system to say, all right, those are the jobs of the past. Here are the jobs of the future. Here's how we get our children involved so that their trajectory is much further ahead than anyone could imagine.
Ebony K. Williams and I were talking a few days ago. I've talked to various others. They talked about how the elevation of sisters, young black women in school, pursuing higher education, far exceeds black males, like about 7-to-1, something along those lines. Don't have the direct number in front of me right now, but it's safe to say that it's a very daunting situation for black males. What advice do we give them?
Yeah, it's definitely something that is concerning. And that was another reason why I actually had a lot of female clients, because I realized that in the corporate world, there were a lot of females that was making $300,000, $400,000, $500,000, and they didn't have male counterparts. And you can kind of say that that's maybe done intentionally as well, right?
Yes.
But
the system,
yeah. So it's definitely it's important to encourage our young boys to pursue careers that they have longevity in and that they actually have a chance to be successful in. What I mean by that is that a lot of kids, we grow up and we want to be an athlete or we want to be an entertainer, because those are things that's consistently pushed upon us, and that is the level of success in our community. And we all know at least one person from the neighborhood that has made it to the league or made it and have a record contract, so it's something that's attainable. But that's one of the things that we do, is that we highlight other people. We highlight the real estate broker, we'll highlight the person that's working on Wall Street, right? To show them that it's just as cool, you can make just as much money or sometimes even more money, right? But you actually have a way better chance at doing this, so it's not like go to the league or you're just a failure, right? And that's something that we really have to encourage our young men to actually have working role models, even somebody like yourself, right, who is in media, right? Like, we have to have more working role models who are making themselves accessible, and we have to really highlight those people the same way that we highlight our celebrities, because encouraging the young men to have hope as opposed to just looking to get by is very important.
Man, you have no idea how much I appreciate what you just said, because putting myself on Front Street without naming names of publications and organizations, I can't tell you how many of us I've been pissed at, because when Barack Obama was the president of the United States, he had to be on the cover of everything, you know, and you got to be on every TV show. And I'm like, it's a whole bunch of black people out here who ain't in the public eye, but are achieving so much, and they need to be seen so we can. As great and phenomenal as Barack Obama was and still is in my mind, he's the president of the United States. You only be one. I mean, there's over 40 million black people in this country. I mean, what about the rest? What are we going to do? And to me, we don't do enough to highlight what we're doing. That you got to be a celebrity in order to do that. Call folks that ain't a celebrity but are achieving big things and put them on Front Street. You feel that way, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, the Barack thing is very interesting, right? When you talk about somebody at the highest level, think about the treatment that he had when he was at that level. Now you're talking about a younger generation that's watching that. Does that even become inspiring anymore? That's right. But on top of highlighting them, we need to nurture them, right? The same way that we're watching what Bronny's going to do, and we're so like enamored by what his decision is going to be. There might be a Bronny Johnson who's creating an app right now in AI that needs support from his neighborhood. We got to make sure that he makes it to MIT or he makes it to Harvard, so he can, or he makes it to an HBCU. Matter of fact, right?
That's right.
So he can have the tools and the resources needed so that his app can be the next Instagram, right? And we're not just using a platform that is not created by us, but we definitely make sure that the platform succeeds. So we have to find our talent, highlight our talent, but also nurture to make sure that they can get ahead.
A couple questions before I let y'all get on out of here. You know, an election year is what we're in right now.
Yeah.
Less than 10 months away from an election. You've got one side on the left. We ain't gonna judge anybody for the purposes of this episode, but what we're gonna say is you have some folks that appear more socially conscious on one side, and you have others that appear to be more financially conscious on the other side.
Well put.
Thank you very much. What do you do as guys in y'all position who are financial influencers on a mission to influence countless lives throughout this nation, black, white, Latina, and beyond, but especially us as black people? What do you do from a political perspective when you see what the objective is one side against the other? Do you, like myself, I deduce what's best for my community and the country, and I go that route, okay? Others might be like, their one issue, whatever it is they care about, they don't give a damn about anything else.
That's what I'm going with.
What do y'all do?
I think that we have to become more politically educated and more politically savvy, where black people, we understand voting. We understand that part of the political process, but that's just the base level of the political process, right? We have to understand how to actually officially fund campaigns, how to hold politicians accountable, super PACs, different things of that nature, right? Because, well, a lot of times we vote out of emotion. And that's not the best way to go about it. I don't think that we should have any emotion. None of these political parties are our friends.
Right.
So
thank you so much for saying that. It's the damn truth. I don't give a damn about either side. They both make me sick. Go ahead.
We shouldn't be looking to have allegiance to anything other than what we can benefit from, right? So if that's a Republican that is going to push agendas that we champion, then hey, we're gonna put money behind this Republican and we're gonna support this Republican. If that's a Democrat, then we're gonna put money behind this Democrat, we're gonna support this Democrat. If that's an independent third party, then the same thing. But I think a lot of times we vote for politicians, they get in office, and they don't do anything for us because they don't feel like they have to do anything for us because we're not holding them accountable. We're not taking money, we're not threatening to take money from them if they don't do this. We're not threatening to back another political opponent, and that's what other groups do, and that's what we have traditionally not have done. So the Democrats take our vote for granted, and the Republicans have just ignored our vote.
That's right.
Right?
I've been saying that for years. Y'all know, y'all seen me say it. You seen me say it.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Troy.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, voting, like, this is something that's new, right? Like, even for us, like 1960, we're talking, like, our grandmothers probably didn't even have the right to vote. And so we gotta be educated from the sense where, yes, the national election is important, but what are we doing when it's the local election?
Yeah.
Are we showing up to vote for the town supervisor, the mayor, your representative, the district attorney, the governor, right? These people are gonna have more of an impact on your daily life than either presidential candidate, right? And so we have to really understand the people that make the decisions about our school and about our taxes and those things we talked about, the property taxes. They're up for election too, right? So rather than saying, all right, I'm not paying attention, or somebody has a sign in their lawn and that may be who I'm gonna go with, actually educate yourself on those people because they're gonna have a much greater impact on your family's life than the president will.
We're sitting here talking about this subject right now. It's a very significant subject, no question about it. And as a result, the more you resonate, you got 1.5 million followers, you're getting more than 3 million downloads per month. Because of that, with that level of significance, one would say comes more pressure because the pressure of responsibility. Do you two feel that? And if so, do you invite it? Particularly considering the world that we live in? Or is this something that's made you say, oh shit, I don't know what I was asking for with this? What's the mentality, Rashad?
I mean, you have to embrace it. It's one of these things that it's hard to really prepare yourself for something until you're actually in it, right? And at that point in time, you're kind of like playing it on the fly. So it is difficult to deal with that level of responsibility because that's not initially what we signed up for. We didn't know that it was going to grow to this level, right? but we're in it, and we do recognize the position that we hold right now, domestically and globally. So we take it serious, and I think that it's been given to us because we have a certain amount of maturity. I think our background, our ability to be able to communicate, remain relatable, our friendship amongst each other. So I think, God grants things to people that he feels are trustworthy to actually manage the situation. So to whom much is given, much is expected. But I think that we have done a good job so far. And as we are continuing to grow, as long as we stay humble and stay able to educate ourselves, I think that we'll be okay.
True.
Yeah, I think it's just been a genuine thing. I always walk through life like every moment has prepared you for the next. I feel like this moment has been like, people say, how can we replicate this? How did you guys get to this point? And I'm like, well, imagine talking to somebody every day for 25 years and then now just having a microphone to record those conversations.
Right.
And that's literally what happened. And so this is a genuine connection that people feel from us. And we feel like the person that you could hang out with. Right, we just have a message that's equally as important than the appearance. And so it is great responsibility. We take it in stride. And we just feel like vessels of doing God's work, honestly. I remember somebody said, yo, we need to protect y'all at all costs. And I'm thinking to myself, where did that come from?
Yeah.
And
You're a threat.
It hit me that how people were viewing us. They were revolutionaries of a time, right? In the civil rights, we can definitely point out to Martin and Malcolm and many others. But in that moment, we saw what happened, right? Leaders were taken out. And what happens when leaders are taken out? The movement falls. And I think people are viewing us like this leaders of the movement. But I always tell them, like, we don't have to worry about anybody interrupting our well-being because the most important thing that we're leaving is information. And that's something that's transferable, right? Because once I give you information, there's no stopping you from giving it to the next person.
Right.
Even in some of the conversations we had where it was like, this is media, but this is new age media. I'm learning from you, you're learning from me.
Yes, sir.
That can't be stopped. And it's something that's transferable for generations.
Well, I don't think it can be stopped, but I also think it can't be stopped because we make sure to reach out and extend our branch and our tentacles to others that can carry the torch. If you remember Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., some have speculated, a matter of fact, have stated as fact, he was not assassinated until he started talking about economic empowerment. Once he started talking about economic empowerment as it pertains to our community, they said, oh no, we can't have that.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, he was gone. And so now, I'm certainly not trying to take it to that level or even be that serious about it, but I asked that question to the both of y'all about financial literacy, economic empowerment. Those are the things you guys are prioritizing to a large degree. I know you're working in partnership with some Bronx schools. I want you to talk about that for a particular second. And in thinking about that, what's the reason you got into this partnership and what's the objective specifically?
Yeah, so we started out in education. As we said earlier, we were teaching summer school. So the core root has always been educating people, right? And as I said, it's much easier to educate a child than to reprogram an adult. So it was always a dream of ours to actually be able to go back into the classroom. That was the goal, was to gain notoriety, gain success, but not for our own vanity, to actually have leverage to go back to where we started. So we had an opportunity. We worked with a principal in the Bronx, Travis Brown, wonderful gentleman, and we put together a curriculum. Took about a year to put together a school curriculum, high school, new age learning. So we're talking about crypto, we're talking about stocks, we're talking about real estate, we're talking about the mindset of an entrepreneur, and it's all relatable. The same way that people have come to love EYL is the same thing that we put in the curriculum. And we're going to pilot it with 12 high schools in the Bronx. We worked with a wonderful superintendent, Fia Davis, one of the superintendents in the Bronx. And we picked the Bronx because that's originally where we started. We were both born in the Bronx. Troy worked in the Bronx. And I just feel like if we can actually start something where the lowest levels of poverty in New York City, you think about New York City as the capital of capitalism, right?
Right.
But still, financial literacy is not mandatory in public schools. And it's the largest public school district in America. So how does this make sense? How are we preparing our children to be successful when we just talk about AI and all these other different things if they're not equipped with the bare basics to know when they graduate high school and become an adult, right? So I feel like if we can start with the most vulnerable population in our great city, then hopefully from there we can expand it to all 5 boroughs and then countrywide, and then globally. So that's the goal.
Well, I'm here for it. I'll help in any way I can. Just say the word. Anything you need from me, consider it done. Invest Fest. Talk about that for a second.
Yeah, Invest Fest, man. It's our annual event. I like to call it where culture and commerce commence. So we have 20,000 people in Atlanta, Georgia, and we want people to pilgrimage for empowerment based on financial education. You know, a lot of times when we talk about 20,000 people, you're talking about a sporting event, or you're talking about a music festival, or you're talking about something of that nature. And we're talking about business, which is a game changer for our community. And so it happens August 23rd to the 25th in Atlanta, Georgia. And we have a multitude of speakers coming from worlds of real estate, crypto, stock market, investing, vending, logistics. We're talking about trucking. And so we want to inspire people right in front of them so they can see that these things are obtainable and it's aspirational. But on top of just the people that are speaking, the networking that exists is going to be something that is unmatched. You're talking about you can find your next partner, you can find your next venture capitalist, you can find your next spouse if you're looking for that. And on top of that, one of the key components of InvestFest is that we have a vendor marketplace with over 400 businesses. And so you're talking about having 400 local businesses mixed in with some corporate accounts that get to be in front of 50,000 people. I mean, where else can that opportunity exist? And so, you know, we like to create environments where education and entertainment can combine, and that's what InvestFest is, and we look forward to having it this year, and hopefully everybody comes out.
When individuals talk about money and having their money, they talk about putting it in the bank, putting it in the savings. If you smart enough, you connect with the right people, you invest some of that money, obviously so. If you invest in the business, if you decide to be an entrepreneur and become your own business, then all of a sudden you venture into the world of private equity and venture capitalist or whatever. Do you guys frown upon stuff like that? Do you like it? Do you embrace it? Is it something that people should consider when you think about private equity, when you think about venture capitalism, stuff like that? Educate the audience about that for a second.
There's levels of investing, and the first level is public companies, right? So you have Apple, you have Microsoft, you have Google. These are all companies that anybody can invest in on the stock market, right? And those are always great investments over the course of time. Stocks usually always go up, right? But when you see real money being made, like on a very large scale, usually that's before a company goes public and they're investing in private companies. So that's where you have venture capitalists, that's where you have the private equity firms, right? These are things that for the most part, we have never really been privy to. By the time we get an opportunity to invest in a company, it's already on the New York Stock Exchange or it's already on NASDAQ. Doesn't make it a bad investment, but you're not gonna probably get the same return that you could get if you invested in Facebook when Mark Zuckerberg was just raising money, right? But that's because we traditionally have not been exposed and don't have the relationships and don't have the money. So now we have been fortunate to be able to now be in the world of the VC world, and we actually have become angel investors ourselves. We've invested in probably over 15 companies, and it's one of these things, it's like baseball, right? You might hit a home run 1 out of every 10 times you're at bat, but that one home run.
That's right. That's what it's all about. That's what you're shooting for.
Could be the grand slam.
That's what you're shooting for. That's what you're doing it for. I mean, listen, when you gamble, what you doing it for? You trying to hit one big one. You're trying to go for it. You're trying to do it that way. Last question to you, Troy, as you sit here today, talking about all the things that we've talked about, Earn Your Leisure and how popular it's become. Some people would say you've already arrived with the level of success that y'all have and the influence that y'all are wielding. How do you feel about where y'all stand right now, and compare that to where you expect y'all to be 5 years from now?
Have we arrived? To a certain extent. I think from, like I said, starting from an iPhone and idea to being even here sitting with you is a huge feat. But there's so much more that we have to do, right? You said 3 million downloads a month. Well, there's over 300 million people in the United States, right? We have over 40 million people of African American descent that there's still an audience that we need to reach. But more so than just from a domestic standpoint, we're an international brand. And so a lot of people have seen us travel, especially to London, but definitely to Africa. We just came back from Accra. And our goal is to make sure that financial literacy is something that is a global topic that we get to touch, but we get to also bridge across the diaspora. And so us being there, learning the land, learning from entrepreneurs, and then going back to say, all right, this is a place that we can now invest. right? This is a safe place, right? When people, like I said, that trust gets built, they've watched us go, we've done events there, they've seen us with entrepreneurs, we're getting the information, and now they're going to watch us invest. And so we're going to be doing that throughout the continent for sure, but throughout the world. This is not something that is unique to the United States. And people that look like us are not unique to the United States. And so if the information was lacking here, you could just imagine what it's like throughout the entire world. And so we look at ourselves like world champions. I always use the comparison of when Muhammad Ali had the Rumble in the Jungle. He didn't call himself the United States champion. He called himself the world champion. And so I see us as that for the financial education space.
How many episodes do y'all do a month?
We do episodes every Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, different shows. We have 3 different shows that we're on, and then we have other shows on our network. But yeah, Monday, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays every week. We don't miss a week.
Last question for you. You talked about how you wished and you wanted to be a financial advisor to a lot of athletes and what have you. The professional athlete in today's day and age, particularly with their followings, what could they do to help financial literacy in this country?
Well, I think that a lot of them are doing great things when you look at KD, when you look at Steph, when you look at LeBron, as far as them starting businesses, investing, and they're doing a lot of great things. So I want to first, salute all those guys. I think it could be championed a little bit more and said a little bit more vocally in the out front. Like, we know that a lot of guys are doing things behind the scenes, but we don't necessarily see it, or we don't necessarily know too much about it, right? So once again, going back, exposure is very important. So I think that a lot of guys have tremendous platforms. I think that if they use their platform just a little bit more to actually showcase business, right? To actually talk about business a little bit more, that would encourage other people to follow suit. So now they have their own media outlets pretty much. If you have 3 million followers, 5 million followers, you have your own media channel, right? So you can really produce any content that you want. So I think it's important for people to be mindful of that when they're curating their content on social media, that it's not just about what outfit you're wearing today. That's cool. But let's showcase and do other things, because there's literally millions of people that watch you, and you might not even realize the power that you have. But if you use your platform to highlight different things, especially in the world of business and entrepreneurship and investing, that could potentially change. But then the last thing I want to say about that is that we need athletes to work together. We need athletes and entertainers to work together. When you look at these contracts now, you're looking at $500, $400 million. We're going to see $1 billion athlete pretty soon as far as a contract. I don't know how long it'll take, but it's gonna happen. This is real money, and this is real wealth, right? So now we're in a position where we can actually put together and make our own VCs. We can put together and make our own super PACs with just the world of entertainment and sports, right? Buy our own sports teams.
That's what Kevin Hart's doing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we have to have more a lot of guys are doing it individually, but it's still not enough individually. But collectively, now we can have billion-dollar funds, right? We can have billion-dollar investment corporations. So we have to see more collaborative efforts happen with our superheroes in the world of sports and entertainment. And hopefully that'll be the next iteration, as opposed to one person trying to battle and compete with the other person. That's still a low-level mindset.
Well, it's interesting that you say that. You called it superhero, and that seems to be an appropriate word, because it would take a true superhero to bring us together, because on far too many more occasions than not, we're not together.
Yeah.
That's really the challenge.
Yeah.
Rashad, Bilal, Troy Millings, Earn Your Leisure podcast. Don't miss it. Right here on the Stephen A. Smith Show. Appreciate y'all both, man. Thank y'all so much. Keep up the great work, man.
Thank you for having us, brother.
I learned a lot. I don't say that often. I learned a lot, all right? Be sure to check out the Earn Your Leisure show on YouTube and Apple Podcasts. InvestFest 2024 will head to Atlanta, Georgia's World Congress Center August 23rd to August 25th, as Troy articulated earlier. Appreciate the love, fellas. Thank y'all so much.
Appreciate you
Welcome
so
back anytime.
Thank you.
Anytime.
Thank you.
More of the Stephen A. Smith Show right here in a minute. Can't thank the fellas enough for the education they just provided. Rashad, Bilal, and Troy Millings, Be sure to check out the Earn Your Leisure show on YouTube and Apple Podcast. InvestFest 2024 will head to Atlanta, Georgia's World Congress Center, August 23rd to August 25th. You know what? I didn't plan on going to Atlanta this summer for anything, to be quite honest with you, but I might make an exception for this. I might have to show up for this right here. Those brothers are special. They're doing special things. They have a special agenda that's beneficial to the masses, not just themselves. They should be applauded for all they're doing, all their success, and we should do everything we can to contribute to them being even more successful as time moves on. Atlanta, Georgia's World Congress Center, InvestFest, August 23rd to August 25th. Make sure you don't miss it. I don't intend to either. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, this is Stephen A. signing off. See you tomorrow, right here on YouTube. Peace and love. Until then.